One of the biggest breakdowns in communication is when someone doesn't feel heard. What makes this such a difficult problem to solve is that it's also a difficult problem to explain. When someone says, "I don't feel heard," what does that really mean? When someone hears this, they are looking for tangible solutions. What can I do? What do you need? Just tell me. And what happens next is typically the exact opposite of what they hope for. They get responses like, "This is what I'm talking about. You just don't get it." At this point, there is usually a cycle that begins, which drives a further wedge between two people. Only this time, both people feel even more defeated because in their mind, it's another failed attempt at trying to solve their communication problem.
Like you've been overlooked. Like what you're saying isn't important to that person, or they don't even prioritize it. So whenever I feel like I'm not being heard, I feel like we've gotten through that phase because now we listen, because he knows he can't do it without me, and I know I can't do it without him. So eventually we have to hear and respond and move forward. But initially, it was a lot of, I hear you, but I'm gonna do this, Yeah. So it's I heard you, but I didn't take in what you said, and I'm just gonna ignore it and do me. And of course that was driving a wedge, because if you don't hear people or hear your spouse, your significant other, then you don't know where they're coming from. You didn't even take the time out to see their vision or see their plan and see if y'all can work together, if it can be parallel. But
I think not being heard, it kind of goes to the extent of yeah, you heard the words I said, but did you hear the meaning behind the words? What is the root cause of why I'm saying what I'm saying? And so, one example, I had a recent birthday party, and although Sean delivered it in a manner of which she took in consideration what I might have said in past conversations of I want this element, I want this element, I want this element. But the execution of the party came across where I felt like I wasn't heard in what I really wanted, because what I valued the most was that, for example purposes, I didn't have a haircut, although it was a surprise party.
Which doesn't like surprise.
But the haircut was so critical. She looking fresh to death. Glammed from head to toe. And I'm walking around without a taper and an edge up. And I'm and so she's like, "But honey, the party was nice." I said, "Yeah, the party was nice, but I look like a mud duck. And you look like glam. And so, although the party was, it was everything I would have imagined it to be, because I didn't feel good, because I wasn't heard in that moment. It came across you didn't appreciate it. I said, "No, baby, I appreciate it. I just didn't enjoy myself because I was conscious of what I looked like."
Of your haircut?
Of my haircut. I didn't have my shoes. My shoes didn't come in on time. And she's like, "Well, baby, you look nice." Yeah, y'all kept telling me I look nice. I didn't feel nice. If I didn't feel nice, I don't care what y'all was saying. I could have looked gorgeous in y'all mind, but I didn't feel good, because if I was gonna do the party, those things would have been a part of my,
And we tried to get
checklist.
all of those things together.
I would have canceled the party though, truthfully. I would have been like, "Hey, we're gonna have to move this to another date."
Oh no. Is this almost like my resentment question? Because, you should have canceled that party too.
Understood.
when I express an emotion or feeling, because I typically am able to identify the emotion or feeling that is behind a concern, or if a grievance that I'm bringing to the table, it's rooted in an emotion that I now feel. And I feel a disconnect when I don't feel heard, I don't feel any empathy.
at the end of the day, for what I've expressed. If I'm telling you I feel hurt, I feel pain right now because of something that you've said, something that you've done, and you jump to the solution, or you jump to, I won't do that again, or you jump to, versus like the empathy that I want to know that you hear me, that I want to know that you feel me, and you don't want me to feel that pain. You don't want me to feel that negative emotion that I have felt. And I think that's a time where I definitely feel that disconnect, or I don't feel like you really are hearing me. It's because you're super quick to get to that solution or get to the end result. Whether it's like rushing the process or rushing through it for whatever end result, I just feel like I'm just a part of the process. I'm like just a bystander. I'm actually not what matters right now. What matters is like you getting through this in order to continue with whatever it was that you were doing in the first place.
I feel like most unheard when I'm telling you something that like I'm very excited about, and that I have like a lot of energy around, especially when it's like something new that when I decide I want something, regardless of how long it's gonna take, it's gonna happen. And manifesting and seeing things through is like a huge part of like who I am. So the moment when I'm visualizing and then I choose to like share that, that's a very vulnerable time for me to like share that. So when you don't put as much energy and excitement into hearing and being excited about and potentially even like ideating with me, that's when I feel like unheard.
Defining what it means to not feel heard. So, what does it mean to not feel heard? It can mean a lot of different things, but in my work with couples, there is one word that best describes it: disconnection. When you don't feel heard, we feel disconnected from the person we're trying to connect with most. Because of this, I want to explore the most common forms of disconnection and what you can do to overcome them in your relationship.
That's the disconnect, because sometimes I can't hear anything you're saying if you're that passionate about something. So then I end up getting more quiet because the passion just, it's just too much.
I think it was like the animosity of like I'm on pause and getting bigger and trying to like take all these vitamins that I can't. It was just like a lot of animosity because it's like you're out here living and I'm on pause. Like I'm nauseous. I need to take these vitamins. I can't hold these vitamins down. I look crazy. My hair's all over my head. I can't get cute, and then you're walking in, you know what I'm saying? Man, we just closed this deal. Man, we just did this. Man, we. I was like, I was almost getting jealous of like the relationship between him and his boy, you know what I'm saying? So like, it was just me being on pause at that time and seeing him like living, because I feel like men are like, oh yeah, you got my baby. I appreciate you. You know what I'm saying? Can I get you something to eat? But they don't really realize like how it feels, to have a human growing inside you. Then COVID was going on. Then he was flourishing. And then he was like just out like shopping, eating, hanging out with his boy, looking at properties. I was like, yeah. So.
But even after Aiden, it was the same thing. Even after Aiden, she still had that same animosity. She would make little comments and stuff like, "That's your girlfriend. That's real." I'm like, now we getting into the disrespect of it.
It was
you know
a
what I'm saying?
thing.
Yeah, and I'm just like, why would you even say something like that?
Because I was on pause and I was big bothered. So it was just like me dealing with like getting back down to where I feel comfortable to move around, because like his friend is cool. I have no problem with his friend. I love his wife, like it was very much a me thing. Like I was just bothered that like, he was still living, and even though the baby is out, the baby is my responsibility. So it was still like being pregnant, but like you're just stuck. So it was very much a me thing.
But I think too, though, Nick, it was a career thing as well, because she hated what she was doing. She was, sitting in the office behind a computer all day, doing what she had to do from the mortgage standpoint. And so I'm looking at it from a standpoint of, I took the risk. I left the job. I made the investments. You know what I'm saying? I put the money up, money that I had put back to take on these risks. So why should I not reap the benefits? And I would think that you'd be happy for me, but she wasn't.
I think we were both coming from selfish standpoints, because if you just heard him, it was like, me, I did this. Where's Joe's reward? You don't see, you know what I'm saying? Me. And I'm like, well, I was feeling this way. So it was very like selfish. It was coming from selfish standpoints. Like, he had animosity towards me because I was mad at the situation that he had going on, and he was like, well, where's my reward? You know what I'm saying? You see me, but it's like, yeah, but it's not the Joe show. It's us, And it's like, if I'm over here not feeling appreciated, he wasn't feeling appreciated, our communication was off. So eventually he started appreciating like me and what I had going on. I started appreciating him, and then we could discuss how we were feeling at the time, that he didn't feel appreciated or seen for his accomplishments, and I didn't feel appreciated or seen for, having this baby during COVID, during a pandemic with a mask on the whole time. It was crazy.
Emotional disconnection. Are you connecting with how I feel? Emotional disconnections are the most common. They are also the most challenging to address, because I can care about something and not have the same emotional connection or reaction to it as you. Yet normally, when we have a different emotional connection or reaction, it gives the impression that we don't care. Let me explain briefly what I mean when I say having a different emotional connection or reaction. An emotional connection to something is how we feel inwardly about what is occurring outwardly. There are several reasons why we have different emotional connections to things. For instance, life experiences and overall perception are just two to name a few. If I view this as a learning opportunity and you view it as a setback, we will have a different emotional connection. Now, our emotional reaction is an outward expression of how we feel inwardly. I can be excited and not be screaming and shouting. Our personality and temperament have the greatest influence on our emotional reactions. I bring these up for a reason, because when we don't acknowledge that our spouse can and will have a different emotional connection and reaction to something, we box them in, and we run the risk of misinterpreting their behavior. If I believe you don't care, when in reality you just have a different emotional response, how I feel about you could be wrong. That said, this is how I want you to bridge the gap when there is an emotional disconnection. Accept that their feelings are valid and real. We waste a lot of time trying to convince someone that how they feel is inaccurate. Just because we feel differently doesn't mean that either of us has to be wrong. Focus on the what and not the why first. It's difficult to connect with how someone feels when you disagree with what caused them to feel that way. However, when there is an emotional disconnection, focus on what they feel first, then focus on why they feel it. Connect to an experience that made you feel that way. If you don't feel how someone feels about something, that doesn't mean you've never experienced that feeling. Here's an example. You may not know how it feels to be laid off from a job, but you know what it feels like to be worried or fearful about something in the future. Tap into an experience that brought up a similar feeling and use this to connect with how they are feeling in that moment.
Well, I feel like women are way more perceptive. You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, I see him storming around. He has something on his mind about real estate. And that's why it was so funny to me, but I was letting him get his, row out, talking about stuff. She wasn't, shooting with me in the gym. I'm here. What do you mean?
Man.
I'm here. What do you
shoot
mean?
now,
You act like
free
I
throw.
packed the babies up and left. What do you mean? I'm here. Even though I'm mad. you know what I'm saying? You still have food? Like, like, I'm confused. So
Uber Eats.
I was like, she would be at the gym, like, what do you mean? Like, just because I was like, I don't know about that right now during COVID. Like, you know what I'm saying? Doesn't mean, like, I don't support you. So I was just like, I'm not going to cuss in front of these people. I'm not doing it today. It's a Sunday. It's not in my ministry. Not today. But I was like, okay. Yeah, okay. Because I'm not out there, you know what I'm saying, with my kids, with my pregnant belly, walking these moldy properties. I'm not supporting you. Like, yeah, I'm supporting you. It's just in a different role. But I think that's where women come in and they're like, okay, he's had a rough day. Let me, like, fill this role over here. Okay, like, oh, okay, he doesn't see that I'm going through it too. Like, we'll talk about it. You know what I'm saying? But I feel like it's, like, being perceptive and picking up on, like, social cues from your partner, like, okay, they're moving this way, it's probably because of this.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of triggers. There's a lot of signs. There is the physical proximity. There is your facial expressions, your lack of eye contact, your quick and readiness to respond, but not to respond to the emotion. Like, you're ready to say something, but it's like to this thing over here, or to get to whatever it was. There are also other times where you don't stop what it is that you are doing. You continue to do the things as if I'm not speaking or even being vulnerable and sharing something with you in that moment. And those moments hurt, for sure.
Understanding disconnect. Are you connecting with what you don't see? When there is an understanding disconnection, what's usually missing is context. How much do you understand what goes on behind the scenes? How familiar are you with everything that contributed to making something happen? And finally, how important is it to you? For instance, if I drop the kids off every morning and say that I'm tired, it's not only the act of dropping them off that makes me tired. If we just focus on the act itself, it's easy for someone to say, psh, I'll drop them off. But what's missing is this: waking up early, adjusting your morning routine, the emotional toll. It's everything that goes into it. But you won't understand this if you can't connect with what you don't see. So in order to improve your understanding disconnect, focus on this: right versus wrong questions. Not all questions are created equal. The right questions in this situation will help you gain more clarity around the context of what you do see. Using the example from earlier, here are some good questions to ask. How does dropping the kids off affect you at work in the morning? What adjustments are most difficult for you to make in order to drop them off on time? These questions are less about the act of dropping the kids off or trying to solve the tired problem. Instead, these questions are about increasing your understanding. The next thing needed in order to bridge the understanding gap in your relationship is this: assume less to know more. If you assume there is more you don't know, you will receive more information. But if you assume there is more you do know, you will receive less information. This perspective will help you improve the understanding disconnection.
I honestly don't go into in terms of the being late. So I know he's told me already, I want to be on time. And I don't go into getting dressed thinking, yes, I'm gonna be late. It is just like, it just happens. Like, I'll see, and sometimes, I don't know, it's like something in me that'll be like, oh, I can just take a few minutes to stand here, or, sit here, or whatever. Those few minutes are like minutes that add up to me being late. So I would have to be more intentional. So, like, as I'm going forward, and because it's something that I've done for so long, it really is hard to switch and do what is on this blueprint that your spouse or your significant other is asking for you to do. It's hard to do things and be on time because I've always had so much to do. With the little ones, when they were always little, it would be like grabbing feral cats to put in this barrel. So I always gave myself grace in terms of being on time because it was so much that we were doing or that I was doing. And so now that I've gotten to a place where I really just kind of get myself together and just make sure that the boy has his stuff out, that he can find it. I've done it for so long, it's just normal ways of movement. So you have to retrain to try to do those things that you're being asked to do.
I mean, the honest answer for me is I just don't want to do it. I mean that's really. I mean, I get it. I try to be mindful of it in the sense of like my children might hear this and they might emulate what I'm doing at some point, and it ain't gonna look so cute then.
It's not hard to do. It's difficult to change your behavior. So like you're having to be more intentional about knowing that you're changing this behavior for a healthy part of your marriage or a healthy part of what you're doing with your significant other. When I say hard, sometimes it's like, it's hard to just do differently. You know, it's not a hard task to do, but it's a hard task in terms of me changing the way I do it.
I'll just speak for me personally when it comes to what you talked about, which is what makes you feel unheard, which is not receiving empathy. I think when I don't show empathy, it is because I tell myself stories about what you should and should not be sensitive about. So I'm not showing empathy for you because I actually am almost upset at the fact that you upset about this in the first place. And also because ultimately and truly, I really want you to be happy. And when I have to show you empathy for something that I feel like I'm personally responsible for, now I feel shame. Because I failed to give you something that you need. So almost showing empathy is acknowledging the fact that I messed up. Because now I have to say, I'm sorry I made you feel that way. I don't want you to feel that way.
The word that popped in my head was pride. I think at the end of the day, when it comes to us knowing what the other person needs, but we still don't give them what they need, it's something about pride that we're not able to get over in that moment for the sake of someone else, because it's the ultimate act of selflessness in order to put my thoughts, my preferences, my whatever aside to give you what you want in that moment or beyond.
I would open up to her and tell her certain things, and she put it in a file. And then once we had a disagreement or whatever, she opened that file up and started calling off that list of things. And one of the worst things you can do for a person that didn't grow up being emotional and all that stuff is to throw a vulnerability back in their face. And I think that in itself, man, is major.
To his point about me like pressing triggers, Joe will act so emotionless and I'm overly emotional, so I'm like, let me get some emotion out of him, so like that's why I would be like, what irks him? Okay, there it is. But then ultimately that comes like back to bite me in the butt because I need like love and nurturing, and now he's a brick wall. You know what I'm saying? Now I have to tear down that brick wall to get back to the loving emotional side.
Doing disconnection. Are you doing what you already know? I would do this exercise with couples where I would ask them to list what their spouse wanted most from them in their relationship. Was it to spend more time with the kids, be more present, work less, have more sex? After they listed their top 5, I would then ask the other person to guess what was listed by answering the following question. I believe my spouse wants me to be more, you fill in the blank. Here's the catch. 9 out of 10 times, the majority of their answers would be correct. Why is this? More times than not, we know what our partner wants from us because they've usually requested it multiple times. There have been conversations, arguments, and not so subtle hints along the way. We know, but we just don't do. Because of this, I want to explore some of the reasons we come up with that keep us from doing what we already know and that prevent us from bridging the doing disconnect in our relationship. Barriers that prevent us from doing what we know. The first barrier is we evaluate their needs according to our needs. We often undermine the needs of our partner because we don't feel it's needed. Not because they didn't say it wasn't needed, but because it's not a need for us. Here is a simple phrase to consider. If it's important to them, then it's important. The second barrier is they haven't done what we asked. Yes, it seems like a childish reason to not do what someone needs from us. But the thought of being taken advantage of doing more than your fair share, prevents many people from doing what they already know. The third barrier is we assess our actions by our intentions. We plan to do it, so we believe we've already done it. The positive feeling of our intentions can create a sense of actually doing what we say, even if we never do. The fourth barrier is we are inconsistent in what we do. Sometimes we have done what we already know. We are just inconsistent. However, this inconsistency provides enough evidence to say that we've done something, but our inconsistency makes it hard to see and believe. The fifth barrier is lack of clarity and a change in target. Now, in some instances, there is a lack of clarity around what is being requested. This makes meeting a need difficult because the need is not specific. You can't know what someone needs more than them, nor should you be responsible for guessing what their needs are. In the same way, it's hard to hit a target that is always moving. Yes, our needs evolve over time, but that's different than the ever-changing need that moves once a previous target is hit.
That the marriage, the relationship, and most importantly, the friendship is worth more than all of that. Like, whatever you calling the issue is not the issue. Like, it kind of goes back to rooting myself and my core values of faith. Like, am I really loving my wife? Am I maximally concentrated on her to the point where, like, I'm putting self aside in this moment to ensure that she has what she needs, that she feels safe? Does she feel heard? Like, am I hearing her? Like, because if I'm saying, well, I don't, I'm just gonna do what I want to do, am I really hearing her? Like, and if I'm not hearing her, why should she hear me? Like, it's relationships is reciprocal. It's give, take, and it should be close to equal as possible. It's never gonna be equal. Somebody always gonna get short end of the stick, but as much as you can, you try to meet the person where they need you to meet them.
What you're saying is that your spouse is not important. And you don't want to say that to your spouse because you don't want your spouse to say that to you.
Men get wrapped up in their own, like, in work, in their pursuits, so on and so forth. So it's like, have you set him down and communicated why you don't feel heard? Because if he knows, then he can help.
If you're trying to communicate with your wife about something that's necessary for y'all to grow, you might want to change the way you communicate. Or, to piggyback off my wife, find out what's causing her to shut down when you talk to her about that particular subject. Is it something that happened in the past? Is there any unresolved issues between the two of you guys? You have to kind of step into her world, take yourself out of it. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, you're trying to reach a goal. So if that causes you to be uncomfortable and maybe have some uncomfortable conversations, or even look at you and say, well, dang, you know, am I communicating this in the most efficient way, the most effective way? Well, probably not, because I'm still not getting the results I want to get. So step into her world, figure out what's going on with her, put her mind at ease, you know, to get her to open up and tell you what's really going on and why she feels the way she feels about whatever. And I think once you can do that, you know what I mean, I think you'll get your answer.
When you don't feel heard, it becomes harder to communicate, and the motivation to express yourself decreases. That's why, in order to communicate better, you must learn how to hear the one who is talking. If someone doesn't feel heard, your efforts to connect with them will always fall short.